It started with a video. Shocking, brutal, and in my eyes, an obscenity. As a veterinary physiotherapist, I knew what I was seeing wasn't just harsh, it was unacceptable. So I recorded my reaction, and like so many in the equestrian world, I waited to see what would happen next. The public outcry was fierce. The governing body had to respond. But was it enough? Now, in this podcast series, I break down the scandal, the reactions, and the resolutions that followed, tracing the journey from Olympic glory to the moment everything unravelled. This is Charlotte Dujardin, the scandal, the backlash, the consequences. I'm Caroline Lindsay, horsesaddlerider.com. Let's begin.
Hello and welcome back. In this episode, the silence begins to crack. Carl Hester speaks from the Olympic stage, while a struggling support group for Charlotte Dujardin reveals more doubt than loyalty. I return to the footage, this time focusing on the bystanders in the mirror. Who was filming? Who was speaking? And as animal charities respond, one thing is clear. They are watching, and there is no doubt that they are not negotiable on the subject of horse abuse. Before I go on to the Metro report about how Charlotte is feeling these days, some comment from Carl Hester. We've got to put the horses first. Carl Hester on the sports challenges and the Charlotte Dujardin video, and that was publicised on the 30th of July, written by Becky Murray. We have to show the positives of the sport, was the message from Carl Hester at the Paris Olympics, as he addressed the Charlotte Dujardin video and the challenges facing equestrian sport. So this was said while he was at the Olympics. Following Carl's Grand Prix test this morning, with the wonderful fame, which slotted them into third of the Group A riders on 77.35%, he tackled the topic of his former teammate. So some background here. A British equestrian mirrored the suspension. Carl said the video was a huge shock to me and confirmed he was not previously aware of it. The video was not filmed at his property. Charlotte made her statement and she's apologised and given her thoughts on it, which I respect. It's now an ongoing investigation with the FEI, said Carl. I've known Charlotte for 17 years. She's a mum and she's paid very heavily for this in a way that you just wouldn't believe. I know she will have to accept what the FEI gives her, and she will. Oh, that seems to suggest she won't be appealing any decision. But I just hope that she's strong enough to be able to come back from that. Nobody's going to support what was seen in the video. You can't. But my personal opinion of Charlotte over 17 years, I have not seen that. Well, according to her autobiography, what he has seen is how she uses her hands while she's riding, which Charlotte herself described as a burning feeling so much that Carl Hester nicknamed her Eddie from the character Edward Scissorhands, as she describes it, and I'm unsure about how Carl addressed the heaviness in her hands. I can't help feeling that horse was very uncomfortable. Carl added that he has not seen Charlotte as he has been in Paris, but he said he knew that things were very, very difficult for her. She's surrounded by people who are trying to help her. She obviously accepts what she did, and I'm glad she's done that. And everyone can see she's done that, he said. This was 4 years ago. People do make mistakes. So how would he know it was 4 years ago while we were in and out of lockdown? Right now, it's going to be a long road for her and a lesson for everybody in the horse world. We've got to put the horses first and show that. So why does he think she should come back from that? It sounds to me Like perhaps he doesn't consider that brutalizing a horse in that way, under normal circumstances and out of the limelight, you would expect a ban on keeping horses for a considerable time, keeping any animal for that matter. Moving forwards, Carl said that we have to show the positives of the sport. We can show how much we love our horses and how we train them, he said. As we see from the sport here in Paris, the last few days we've seen amazing sport. And I would argue some not so amazing equestrian sport. And I've made a couple of videos comparing Carl Hester's performance with the highest and lowest ranking performances. And we've seen the care that everyone's getting. The grooms here are incredibly hardworking, yes, how they love and look after the horses. And I hope that really starts to show. Well, it's odd that this is put on the grooms to show how they love and look after the horses. And that's the conclusion of that article. I just want to show you something that I thought I'd take a quick look at last night on Facebook. I was just looking at potentially how much support Charlotte Dujardin has. And given that this is a support group here, albeit an unofficial one, I still thought it would be interesting to have a look. It has 33 members, all accrued in approximately 4 months or so. Dear C, what can this group do and how can we support you to getting back into the arena? And a video of her riding the horse that she would have ridden at the Olympics, basically showing this is how it could have been. Another comment, I'm supporting Charlotte. It was 4 years ago. Some people are mean or jealous. She's a great rider and equestrian in dressage, the best. She loved her special horse. We'll miss you not completing at the Olympics. And one of the admins of the group says thanks, answering on Charlotte Dujardin's behalf, presumably. And someone's come in with seriously. And we have another performance posted there. So presumably to remind people of the image that she used to portray, in my view. So this group was started around the time that the story broke and the original video was publicized. That's not in this group, incidentally, or that's not linked to in this group. Oh dear, someone says turd, which in the UK, for the benefit of the international viewers, means feces. And again, more, this is what you could have won, and or pos vile animal abuser. So she's getting some comments here from people with a different opinion, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of support in this group. If I was the admins, I would take this group down, because it being there just shows me that there are very few people who vocalize support for Charlotte Dujardin and her potential return. The admin don't delete the comments either. Again, abuser. So nothing much there. So it would appear that the people on social media condemning her actions, Charlotte Dujardin's abuse video, outnumber her supporters, because there's a lot more dialogue from people who don't support what she did. And we'll take a look at what Metro reports. This publication is one that I've seen widely distributed on the London Underground. So basically a quick read for commuters. Published September 28th, written by Ben Fleming. British Olympic legend mentally crucified by a scandal that stopped her competing in Paris. Well, I would argue that the horse abused in that video was also mentally crucified. And if you refer back to my video of my review and opinions while I was running that video on YouTube, you'll see a lot of signs of psychological stress being demonstrated by the horse. So is it karma if you inflict psychological stress and put that out there? You might just get it back. She's been mentally crucified by the horsewhipping scandal that saw her banned from competing at the Olympics. She's Britain's joint most decorated female Olympian, due to compete at her 4th Games in both the individual dressage and team event. However, she was forced to pull out on the eve of the Olympics because of the video. In a statement, she claimed she made an error of judgment some 24 times, as I recall, using the whip on and at that horse during a coaching session 4 years ago, and is deeply ashamed of her actions, but is still awaiting her tribunal to discover the length of any potential ban. Months after the scandal broke, the Brit is still said to be reeling from the after effects, which include continued death threats, that's new to me, and abuse for her actions. Well, we haven't seen her out in public. I don't know of any sightings of her, except the Sun newspaper reported her meeting one of her horse sponsors. I made a video on that story, but she would appear to be laying low at the moment because there's nothing out there in the news to say otherwise. So where is she getting these death threats from? And where's she getting the abuse from? Mentally, they are crucifying her, an anonymous rider who rides at the same yard as Dujardin. Well, is that her own yard she's riding at? And is she employing staff there? She's got anti-hunt saboteurs outside the house. That's interesting. Death threats. Farriers have had threats for going in and shoeing the horses. Horrific. Well, I'm surprised there's no stories out there or images out there of these saboteurs. Let me know in the comments below if there are images circulating about that. As well as the impending legal battle, Dujardin has also taken a huge financial hit, with her UK sport funding withdrawn and 7 sponsors severing their ties. Well, this is about business. And this scandal, as I see it, is not good for business. So sponsors and those funding her will be running for the hills. The British rider could face a lengthy suspension, especially after Carina Kruth, a Danish rider who also withdrew from Paris, was recently slapped with an 8-month suspension for a similar offence. 8 months. I wouldn't say it was similar, because what we have to consider with Charlotte Dujardin's case is massively bringing the sport into disrepute, certainly in the UK, and that there was a rider in a vulnerable situation that Charlotte was not at the time safeguarding, because the horse was delivered 24 lashes with a lunge whip, and the rider, as a consequence, was placed in grave danger. Had that horse reacted as many horses would and bolted, galloped off with that rider, she could have fallen off and become seriously injured, along with the other bystanders who appear to have been in the arena. As I say, if you look back at the video, you'll see that the other 2 individuals present were in the arena, from what I can make out. While the whistleblower who came forward with the video has not been named yet, the Dutch equine lawyer who filed the complaint said his client took no pleasure in coming forward with the video. Well, who would? It's not fun to ruin a career, Stefan Wensing said. My client is not celebrating. She doesn't feel like a hero, but she told me this had to be done as she wants to save dressage. Alicia Dickinson, meanwhile, a dressage trainer identified as one of 3 people who saw the incident take place, said Dujardin had made enemies in the sport and hinted the complaint could be personally motivated. I would like to make clear I'm not the whistleblower. I did not film the footage. Any online speculation is unfounded, the Australian said at the time on Instagram. Our business relationship ended after the lesson shown in the video. Charlotte has many enemies. It could have been anyone who leaked the video, but I got the backlash. And that concludes that report.
I just wanted to jump in with a few corrections to my last video, which was about the facts of the Charlotte Dujardin whipping video as stated to us by the lawyer and the newspapers. Before I get on to the changes that the FEI have made or are making, and also I wanted to cover what constitutes as consent, participant consent for training horses. So that's on the topic of unnecessary suffering. And I want to talk about, is training, conditioning horses, is that necessary suffering? But first, in the comments of the last video, I have attempted to state the facts and I've summarised them here. And it wasn't directly the lawyer, the Dutch lawyer, Stefan Wensing, that stated that the rider's mother was filming. It was the Sun newspaper who stated that they understand that the rider's mother was filming. So not entirely factual, although they do go on to talk about Stefan Wensing and his comments. So that's one little bit of a correction there, thanks to Harvey, who pointed out that newspapers aren't always as factual as we believe them to be. And this is such a complex story, so I've struggled to get to the facts myself, even those stated by the lawyers. And of course, there is a slight language barrier there because Mr. Wensing is a Dutch lawyer, and although his English is superb, it's potentially his second language. And then, of course, when he says something to someone else, it has to be written down and then interpreted by the readers. The rider's mother is the lawyer's client, so the lawyer did state that. And he did state that the whistleblower is not the rider in the video. And the rest you can verify from my video. So there's still a bit of a question mark as to whoever filmed the video, are they the whistleblower? Because that's not clear, because the lawyer has said that the whistleblower is not the rider. So that leaves us 2 other options. The one who filmed it, who the Sun understands was the rider's mother, or the other bystander, which was Alicia Dickinson, who was there, she says, but not filming and not whistleblowing. And I'll show you something interesting about that video, because when you zoom in, you can see the 2 bystanders, and one of them is looking straight ahead and the other one turns. So it's kind of obvious which one is filming, i.e. the one standing very still, and which one is speaking. So taking a look at the film. The other thing was, what I find unusual is why the whistleblower, who I've assumed to be British, had to use a lawyer not based in England. But then it occurred to me, after I'd made the film, that the whistleblower could be Dutch. So I have no evidence that says that the whistleblower was British. So reading very carefully the client may not be the whistleblower, the client made the video, and so on. Very difficult to piece together the facts. And as I've said here, I've taken quotes from 2 different reports who had interviewed the lawyer. I've said the person who made the film is referred to as Mr. Wensing's client and must, in theory, therefore be the whistleblower. But maybe they just came forward with the film and somebody else wanted to make a legal case out of it, or somebody else wanted to involve a lawyer. So, yeah, you need quite a careful read of these reports to see who did what and what their motivation was. And then it occurred to me, because, well, I had to look through a few other reports to find Alicia Dickinson's age, and that's stated as 40 this year at the time of that particular news report. The report states that she has a daughter, so it's plausible that the young person, the 19-year-old riding in the video, that Alicia Dickinson could be her mother if she had a 16 to 18-year-old daughter, depending on whether the video is 2.5 or 4 years old. But that's not confirmed. Now, something interesting with me querying about this, why a Dutch lawyer, is this report. Now, I can't get the full report at the moment. I have a Horse and Hound subscription, but I don't seem to be able to access digitally just yet. But having done the search on this gentleman, Pippa Cookson from Horse and Hound, according to this search snippet from Google, Dujardin's legal counsel is also Dutch. So, yeah, just curious. What is it with equestrian law activity and Dutch lawyers? And then we have Charlotte Dujardin's lawyer, apparently, allegedly, has also put out a news story or a statement about the timing of the video being incomprehensible as sabotage concerns grow. Says the 2-year delay in reporting concerns could render the case inadmissible. And what he adds to the story is that the film is potentially, or the release of the film is more about sabotage, potentially, than animal welfare. On the basis that if you've witnessed that, yeah, okay, you might hold on to it for a week or 2 while you make inquiries and find out how to go about complaining, but that releasing it so close to the Olympics could plausibly be seen as sabotage, and that potentially the whistleblower could potentially have prevented horse abuse had they handed the film in a lot sooner. But that said, the sanctions in this case can only prevent FEI members from competing. They can't take the horses away from them or take them away from the horses. And Luc Shellstret, apologies for my pronunciation if it's wrong, appears to be a business rival of the whistleblower's representative. So he sent an open letter to Dutch media and questioned the motives of the decision to alert authorities, referencing Wensing, saying that his client wanted to prevent Charlotte Dujardin from winning medals at the Olympic Games. Well, yeah, that is different from saying, I want to save dressage and I want to speak for abused horses, paraphrasing there. This statement makes it clear what motivated the anonymous client to file a complaint, he writes. When the complaining client finds animal welfare so important, it is incomprehensible why they wait so long to file complaints. Moreover, they are also required to promptly report alleged cases of horse abuse, that the regulations say they should be reported without delay, and is precisely aimed at preventing animal suffering, and that the sanctions to be imposed may be limited as a result. And the other report was from ITV, I won't read it all. So I was just looking at a bit broader reporting than what I've done so far. So here we have the FEI president, Ingmar de Vos, said the organisation was deeply disappointed by the development, the video coming to light, which comes just days before the opening of Paris 24. So yeah, it really put a cat among the pigeons, potentially while organisations were entrenched with the organisation of the Games. He said, however, it is our responsibility and crucial that we address any instances of abuse. Yeah, there was an interesting report about blue tongue issues during the Paris Olympics, as equine welfare cannot be compromised. So from what I read, the blue tongue incident was not reported as being fully investigated, but I have made videos about that, so you can refer to those for the story. Charlotte has expressed genuine remorse for her actions, and we recognise and appreciate her willingness to take responsibility. Well, what else can she do? It's difficult to deny, which she has not. Despite the unfortunate timing, we believe this action reaffirms the FEI's commitment to welfare as the guardians of our equine partners and the integrity of our sport. So yeah, there were a couple of other incidents and suspensions from games, and also they had stewards on site enforcing rules as best they could. And as I recall, one competitor did get a yellow card for hyperflexing a horse while warming up. So yeah, it's all going in the right direction. And from the horse welfare charity Brook, they confirmed that Dujardin has been dropped as an ambassador in the wake of the controversy. In a statement, the charity said it was deeply disturbed to learn about this video. I bet it was. Our whole ethos is around kindness and compassion to horses. And to see the opposite of this from someone with such a high profile is beyond disappointing. Yeah, everybody was shocked at this case. Well, just about everybody. There can never be a justification for mistreating animals. No, there can't. And this is why I want to cover training of horses and the importance of horses consenting to being trained. So one or two of you may find that intriguing, but it is possible to get consent from them. World Horse Welfare Chief Executive Roly Owers, meanwhile, called the Dujardin episode a massive wake-up call for anyone who thinks this is not important. Horse sport rightly has high standards, as illustrated in the FEI Code of Conduct and British Equestrians' Charter for the Horse, but it is a collective responsibility to maintain these standards, Mr. Owers said. Yeah, we all have a responsibility. We all need to be looking out for horses, and we all need to be looking out for riders, trainers, making errors of judgment. So we can't just say, oh, isn't that terrible, and walk off without doing anything. Respect for the horse must be at the heart of every equestrian and every equestrian sport, and their actions must demonstrate that respect all of the time. But it's pretty scary to whistleblow. But we must all find a way with this and have a contingency and be open, transparent about safeguarding the welfare of horses. A UK sports spokesperson added, "We expect all staff and athletes in Olympic and Paralympic sport to adhere to the highest standards of behaviour, ethics and integrity. We are disturbed by the serious concerns that have been raised in the past 24 hours regarding horse welfare and Charlotte Dujardin." Yeah, so UK sport is not just about equestrian sport. These potentially are an organisation who perhaps have limited knowledge of equestrian sport, who potentially are animal lovers themselves, and who potentially may be very confused about this situation, but not so confused about what they will and won't fund. So they have a code of conduct and expect all staff and athletes to adhere to that. Sport national governing bodies are required to notify us when they become aware of any conduct-related issues involving a world-class programme athlete or member of staff, so it can be reviewed under the funding eligibility policy. Okay, so they're leaving it to the national governing bodies to carry out the due diligence and report this to them. In line with our eligibility policy, Charlotte Dujardin's eligibility to receive public funding and access to publicly funded benefits has now been suspended pending the outcome of the FEI investigation. So it's very easy for us to presume that the FEI have a lot of power, which they do over their membership, but they are being scrutinised by other organisations that they report to.
Thank you for keeping this case in the public spotlight so that ultimately we can all do our bit to ensure that sport horses, dressage horses that are supposed to represent the absolute best in horse training, that is reflected in their movement. Let's get them some help by removing the rewards that can make their way into the hands of abusers.
If you found this episode thought-provoking, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, leave a review. It really helps more equestrians and horse lovers find the podcast. You can also join the conversation on the Horse Saddle Rider YouTube channel. And finally, I'll be giving you more insights into the equestrian world. So be sure to come back and join me so that together we can campaign for better conditions for our sport horses.